When my daughter told me to go find another place to die, I stood in my own hallway with the taste of bile and dust in my mouth. I'd done what she asked for decades. Smiled, kept quiet, played nice. That day, I realized Olivia was about to learn that sometimes the little piece no one expects to win can turn into a queen. I wasn't ready to be buried yet, not by my own child. If you're watching this, please hit subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. I want to know who's out there hearing this, because when Thomas died of a heart attack at 71, I honestly thought the ground had given way under my feet. Olivia swept into my pain like a hawk circling a rabbit. She dropped off soups and vitamins, set out pill containers, and said it was all about keeping me healthy. She taped a calendar to the door with stars on the days I should rest. Back then, I didn't see the numbers in her eyes. The mental ledger she was balancing while she dabbed my tears and fluffed the blanket on my lap. She asked for bank statements to help, collected mail so you don't have to worry, and insisted I let Jason handle the utilities for a few weeks. She'd always been Thomas's favorite, his tiny princess with expensive taste and a talent for getting her way. He loved her fiercely, and I did too, even when her demands felt like paper cuts. In the blur after the funeral, she grew more and more firm about next steps, which turned out to be my so-called living situation. She would come by with Jason for dinner, and while I set the table, they'd wander room to room, counting closets out loud, whispering about how this corner could be an office and that room could be a nursery. Like I wasn't right there washing the dishes I'd owned since before she was born. 3 days after we buried Thomas, they showed up without calling. Olivia in a pressed blouse, Jason carrying 2 big suitcases. "Mom, we've made a decision," she said, voice sugary like it was a favor. "Jason got the promotion, and we need to move in for a while. Actually, Mom, there's more. According to Dad's will, I'm the one who inherits everything." She took a neat breath. "The house, the accounts, everything falls to me. I've been letting you stay because I felt bad, but it can't go on." I stared at her like she'd started speaking another language. "What are you talking about? Thomas would never..." The words tripped and broke before I could catch them. She waved a hand, soft smile cutting deep. "You never really understood money or investments. You were just the wife. It's nothing personal." Jason looked at his shoes and said nothing. Just the wife. 43 years boiled down to 3 little words. In a haze, I filled 2 suitcases and a small box with photos. My life shrunk to zippers and cardboard. I wrapped the wedding china in dish towels and tucked Thomas's cardigan on top of my nightgowns. Olivia stood in the doorway checking her watch like a landlord, and Jason kept offering to carry things I didn't want him touching. They told me they'd found a nice place for me, somewhere with support, the kind of brochure language people use when they'd rather not say a cheap place for old people. Jason packed my bags into their BMW with the tidy efficiency of a valet. The car pulled away, and I watched the house that I'd dusted, scrubbed, and painted for decades get smaller in the rear window, until it was just a square of brick and shadow. The part that hurt most was how familiar the moment felt. Me in the back seat, them up front making plans, as if I'd never once been the person who made the plans. Olivia scrolled on her phone between directions while Jason talked about parking permits. They didn't drive me to that supportive complex after all. They took me to a roadside place with a flickering neon sign, the Sunset Inn. It was exactly what it looked like. $49 a night, thin towels, a window unit that rattled like it was giving up, and a carpet patterned to hide stains. Olivia pressed 2 crisp hundreds into my palm like she expected me to say thank you. "This should cover a few nights," she said. "Use the time to go through Dad's paperwork. There's money from your own inheritance, remember?" She said it like a teacher scolding a slow student. They left me there, standing in a motel room that smelled like old cigarettes and bleach. I sat on the sagging mattress and stared at nothing until the light outside turned the curtains the color of weak tea. My heart beat in my ears the way it does when you've cried too hard and there's nothing left to wring out. I counted the minutes between the compressor kicking on and off. Then, in that ugly little room, the doubt finally spoke up. Thomas was meticulous. He color-coded file folders and kept neat binders for taxes. He labeled extension cords and spare keys. He didn't have to do anything, not birthdays, not bills, not promises. We had sat with the firm that handled our affairs just a few weeks earlier and gone over everything. I could picture the papers. I could hear the careful way Thomas liked to read each clause out loud. I was certain what Olivia said didn't line up with what we had agreed to, certain down to the ache in my bones. Thomas was many things. Traditional, sometimes stubborn, always proud, but he wasn't a man who would toss his wife onto the street like unwanted trash. And there was another thing. Over the years, we'd relied on the same attorney for our house purchase and other business matters. If anyone could tell me what the truth actually was, it would be that office. I stared at the motel's ceiling, paint bubbling around the sprinkler head, and decided that in the morning I would stop letting other people make my choices for me. At first light, I found the card I'd kept in the kitchen junk drawer for years and dialed Daniel Harper's office from the motel phone. The receptionist heard my name and told me to come right away. I put on the least wrinkled blouse from my suitcase, combed my hair with my fingers, and rode a bus that smelled like diesel and coffee to a building I'd been inside a dozen times with Thomas. The elevator mirrors were unforgiving, but I didn't look away. I wasn't a ghost. Not yet. Daniel met me at the door before I could sit. He'd gone gray at the temples, but his voice was the same, steady, low, a tone that could slow a storm. "Grace," he said, eyes soft with a kind of grief that made me want to cry again. "I'm very sorry about Thomas." "Thank you," I managed. "I need to know what's real. Olivia says everything is hers." He led me into his office and closed the door. There were 2 thick folders on his desk already, my name on one label and Thomas's on the other. Through the glass, I could see the receptionist set a little sign to hold calls. Daniel took a breath like he was choosing careful steps across a creek. "I've been trying to reach you. We mailed a formal notice about the estate last week to 847 Oakwood Drive. When I didn't hear back, my assistant phoned. Your daughter picked up." My stomach tightened. I thought of the stacks of envelopes Olivia had kept so I wouldn't have to worry, and her easy habit of speaking for me. "She told us you were overwhelmed and asked that we send copies directly to her," he went on. "She dropped off a letter authorizing it, signed with your name. We flagged it. The signature was close, but not quite. I decided to wait and see you in person. I'm glad you're here." I held the edge of the chair to keep my hands from shaking. "She and Jason put me in a motel and gave me $200, I said, hearing how small the number sounded. "She said Thomas left everything to her, the house, the accounts. She said she was letting me stay out of pity." Daniel's jaw tightened in a polite lawyer's way. He opened the first folder and slid a document across the desk until it rested in front of me. "Let's start with the house. Title for 847 Oakwood Drive is held in your name now, by right of survivorship. That happened the instant Thomas passed. No one can take that from you." The address on the page looked like a promise written in ink. Something hot surged under my ribs. Not anger exactly, but a steadiness I hadn't felt since the funeral. "So the house is mine." "Yes," he said, "yours." He flipped to the next set of papers. As for the rest, Thomas updated his will and trust 2 months ago. We reviewed everything together in this office. "Do you remember?" I did. Thomas reading the clauses out loud, tapping the margin with his pen, asking if I understood. The folder tabs, his methodical calm, the way he smiled at me afterward and squeezed my hand in the elevator. I nodded. "Per the will," Daniel said, 70% of the estate goes to you outright. The remaining portion funds a trust in the amount of $10 million for Olivia. That trust is subject to a behavior clause." A behavior clause. He turned the page and pointed to a paragraph. I didn't catch all the legal words on the first pass, but I understood the plain idea. Olivia's access to that money required her to act with basic decency toward me. No intimidation, no coercion, no exploitation. If she mistreated me or tried to manipulate the estate, the $10 million would be redirected to me immediately. "It's not about punishment," Daniel said quietly. "Thomas wanted to protect you. He believed Olivia loves you in her way, but he also saw patterns. He wanted to create a boundary that had teeth." The memory that rose up was simple. Thomas drying a plate beside me at the sink, while our daughter told him she deserved more because she was carrying the family name forward. He'd called it nonsense, then kissed the top of my head and said we'd take care of each other. I swallowed hard. Daniel continued, "When you didn't appear for the reading and Olivia claimed you preferred to let her handle matters, I grew concerned. And what you've just told me, being locked out of your own home, sent to a motel, handed a small sum under the pretense of kindness, that's not only unkind, it qualifies." "Qualifies," I repeated, trying out the word like a key in a door. He nodded. "Under the clause, and under elder protection statutes, we can move. I'll need you to sign a statement describing exactly what happened and when. We'll keep records of the motel receipt, the phone call logs, anything that shows a pattern." "So Thomas didn't cut me out," I said, voice shaking now for a different reason. "He did not." Daniel opened the second folder and tapped the summary page. As of the most recent valuations, the estate totals approximately $33 million. 70% to you is about $23 million. The $10 million trust for Olivia is contingent, as I explained. Given what's transpired, it reverts to you as well. That means the full $33 million is yours, along with the house. The numbers landed like something heavy set on a table. Solid. Undeniable. I thought of the 2 crisp hundreds Olivia had pressed into my palm and felt a wave of nausea pass and then recede. "She knew," I whispered. "She must have known, or at least suspected. That's why she grabbed the mail. That's why she had Jason handle the utilities. She wasn't helping me. She was staging it." Daniel's eyes were steady. "I don't want you to fixate on their motives. Focus on steps. We'll execute the documents today. I'll notify the trustee and the banks of the clause activation. We'll provide copies of the will to the proper parties. I'll also contact an investigator to document everything. If there's been any attempted interference with mail or records, we'll let law enforcement confirm it." I looked down at my hands. The skin was thin and mapped with veins, but they were still my hands. They had packed lunches, stitched hems, signed mortgage checks, wiped tears from a little girl's face and from my husband's when his father died. They weren't finished. "I want to do this," I said, "all of it, correctly." He placed a legal pad in front of me and a pen that felt heavier than it looked. I wrote the time and date from memory, the words coming out with more clarity than I expected. The sun set in, the neon sign, the 2 suitcases, the exact phrases Olivia used, the way Jason didn't meet my eyes. How quickly they hurried me out of rooms I had painted myself. Daniel asked small questions to anchor my account. What color the car was, who carried which bag, whether anyone else was present. I answered everything I could. When we were done, he gathered the pages like someone collecting fragile pieces of something valuable. "I'm going to make certified copies for you to take," he said. "Keep them with you. Do you have a safe place?" "I will," I said, "soon." He hesitated. "Grace, I want to prepare you for pushback. Olivia may insist there's been a misunderstanding. She may try to paint this as a temporary arrangement for your own good. She may even attempt to frame you as confused." "I'm not confused," I said, and surprised myself with how firm it sounded. "I know you're not," he replied. "I simply want you to expect the tactics." He slid another paper forward. "This is a letter asserting your right to immediate possession of 847 Oakwood Drive. It's formal notice to anyone occupying the property without your consent. Do not deliver it yourself. We'll handle service properly." I traced the line of my name at the bottom and signed. For a second, I could see Thomas's hand next to mine, the careful loop of his T, the way he'd always slide the pen back into his pocket with a tiny click, like punctuation. Daniel stood and walked me to the door. "We'll begin the notifications this afternoon," he said. "I'll check in with you by day's end. Use the office line if you need me before then. And Grace," he paused, "Thomas was proud of you. He told me that more than once." I exhaled a breath I'd been holding since the day Olivia rang the doorbell and said she had news. In the hallway, the receptionist handed me an envelope with certified copies and her card paper-clipped to the corner. The elevator was slow, as if refusing to drop me back into the same life I'd walked in from an hour earlier. Outside, the air felt sharper. I pressed the envelope to my chest and started toward the bus stop. I wasn't sure what Olivia would do when she realized the ground she'd tried to stand on wasn't hers. I only knew what Thomas had built still held me up, and that I was done letting anyone speak for me. Daniel didn't waste time. As soon as the ink dried on the statements, he laid out the next steps like a checklist. We'd report the fraud, then notify every bank, and only after that would we let Olivia hear the truth from me. He picked up his phone and started dialing. I sat there with my palms flat on my skirt, listening to a world I couldn't see begin to tilt. The calls sounded clinical. Account numbers, dates, formal notices, flags for suspected elder exploitation. Daniel's tone never wavered. He identified himself, referenced the clause Thomas had built into the trust, and asked for immediate protective holds. Once the first institution moved, the rest followed like dominoes. By the end of the second hour, lines I'd never known existed under my name were secured, and everything Olivia had tried to switch into hers was put on ice pending proof of ownership. Utilities she'd transferred were paused, accounts she'd managed were locked, and anything with my signature on it required live verification. By me, not my daughter, speaking on my behalf. A knock at the door broke the rhythm. A man in a plain jacket introduced himself as Detective Morales. Daniel had called him after reviewing the forged authorizations. The detective's questions were careful, never rushed. When had Olivia taken over the mail? Who had told me I was traveling, precisely? How had I been moved out of 847 Oakwood Drive? He studied the documents like a mechanic leaning over a hood. "These aren't amateur jobs," he said, not unkindly. "Whoever prepared them understands how to skirt systems. We'll check whether Jason or anyone tied to his work had a hand in this." Daniel's assistant stepped in to say 2 more banks had confirmed the blocks. A note slid across the desk with times, reference numbers, and the phrase, "Elder Protection Escalation" underlined twice. "Good," Daniel said, and looked at me. "Next we take 1 call. You'll speak. Keep it factual. I'll be here, and so will Detective Morales." At precisely 3:47 p.m., my phone lit up with Olivia's name. I put it on speaker and set it on the polished wood like a tiny stage. "Mom," she said, breathy and urgent. "What are you doing? Daniel's office told me you were there. Why didn't you tell me? I've been handling everything so you could rest." "You told our attorney I was traveling," I replied. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. "You collected my mail, moved bills, and signed papers with my name. You took me to the Sunset Inn and left me with $200, and you stood in my kitchen and said Dad left you everything." A pause stretched. "I didn't stand in your kitchen and say, 'Mom, you're twisting this,'" she said, gentle like I was a child. "You've never dealt with investments. You don't understand how these things are structured. I understand more than you think. I understand Thomas titled the house to me. I understand the will gives me 70%. I understand there's a trust with a condition that requires you to treat me with basic decency. And I understand that because of what you did, that condition kicked in." On the other end, I could hear the thin sound of her pulling in breath. "You can't be serious. That clause is ridiculous. It was your father's way of drawing a line," I said, "and I'm following it." "You're not capable of handling this kind of money," she snapped, sweetness gone. "You need supervision. We can have you evaluated, for everyone's safety." Detective Morales leaned toward the phone. "Olivia, this is Detective Morales. We're documenting potential financial exploitation and forgery. You're welcome to come in voluntarily and tell your side." "Who the hell are—" She stopped. "Mom, you wouldn't call the police on your own daughter." "Watch me," I said, and felt something settle inside me like a door closing. If Jason helped you create those papers or move anything under false pretenses, he'll answer for it too. She hung up. The room stayed quiet for a beat, the kind of quiet that's actually full of movement. Then my phone buzzed again. A text. "Mom, please don't do this. We're family. Think about the kids." Another. "Let's handle this privately. No need to embarrass anyone." Then, "If you tell people lies about me, we'll have to talk about your mental state, about whether you're fit to make decisions." I typed back, "I am thinking about them." My hands didn't shake. Daniel nodded toward his assistant, who was on another line, confirming that Olivia's attempts to access anything had begun to fail. "Her cards are being declined," the assistant said softly when she hung up, almost apologetic even now. "Utilities she tried to flip are under review." "Expected," Daniel said. "We've protected what's yours." Detective Morales took notes. "Once we finish the intake, we'll request the footage from your home security if you have it, and we'll pull any relevant financial records. The more precise your timeline, the cleaner the case. We'll also put out a notice so Patrol knows there are open warrants pending signature if she doesn't present herself." We finished signing. Daniel printed certified letters asserting my possession of 847 Oakwood Drive and the activation of the clause. He told me not to serve anyone myself. He'd take care of it. I stepped into the hallway with a thick envelope hugged to my chest and a feeling like I'd been holding my breath for weeks without realizing it. The next messages from Olivia were shorter and messier. "You're blowing this up over nothing. This is normal." Then, almost sweet, "We can fix this if you stop now." Then colder, "This won't work out well for you." It didn't work out well for her. At 8:30 p.m. in Leonard, officers took her into custody on the charges Detective Morales had outlined. She tried to protest, asked to call her lawyer, and discovered that the one she named couldn't help her with what she'd done. I found out later she'd also learned, right there, standing under fluorescent lights, that the lines she'd opened, the accounts she'd treated like hers, weren't available to her anymore. At dawn, it was Jason's turn. He was picked up at his office, calm in a way that read to me like arrogance even secondhand. A forensic accountant had already connected the forged forms to a printing company Jason used for his firm's marketing. There were invoices, email trails, timestamps. The detectives' team moved through it all like people who knew exactly where to look. By the time they walked him out, he knew this wasn't going to be brushed off as a misunderstanding. I went home. I mean that literally. I used my own key and stepped into the quiet of a place I'd cleaned and painted and kept for decades. Olivia had already shoved her life into corners that weren't hers. Makeup on the dresser, a throw draped over Thomas's chair. But the room was mine. For the first night in 43 years, I slept in the master bedroom without telling myself it was only Thomas's space. Grief and relief made a strange braid in my chest. I'd cried every night since he died of a heart attack at 71. That night, lying beneath the same ceiling where we'd whispered to each other through storms and repairs and bills, I cried for a different reason. I wasn't a guest in my own life. Morning light pulled me up. I made coffee in the kitchen I could navigate with my eyes closed and stood at the window while the pot hissed. For a minute, I just watched the street I knew as well as the lines on my palm. Then the phone rang again. "Daniel. Updates," he said. "Olivia's bail is set at $50,000. There was a paper sound, the rustle of pages. Given that all accounts are frozen or reverted and the credit lines she tried to establish are suspended for verification, she doesn't have quick access to post it. She'll be arraigned later today." He paused. Also, Detective Morales' contacts flagged related activity tied to Jason's network. There may be an overlapping investigation for securities fraud. Securities fraud? The words felt foreign in my mouth and painfully familiar at the same time, like a song I'd heard through a wall for years and never caught the lyrics. "It's preliminary," he said. "I don't want you to carry that. Let the agencies do their job." I walked my fingers around the rim of the mug. For most of my marriage, I'd been kept politely at a distance from the numbers. I'd signed where Thomas asked me to sign, trusted his calm, and let him be the one who talked about portfolios and projections. Olivia had mirrored that same posture when she decided I was too delicate to understand. She'd underestimated me. They both had in different ways. The rest of the morning was a string of practicalities. Daniel's office confirmed service of the possession letter for 847 Oakwood Drive. The detective scheduled a time to pick up anything I could find that might help. Sticky notes with logins, a calendar Olivia had taped to my door with stars on rest days, a stack of envelopes she'd tucked into a drawer so I wouldn't have to worry. I gathered it all and labeled a shoebox with today's date. I ate toast standing up and realized I could taste it again. Another call buzzed through. Unknown number, then another. Then a voicemail from someone who said she was Jason's colleague asking for clarity. I let it go to voicemail. The truth didn't need me to defend it every 5 minutes. It had paperwork and timestamps, and it had the cool, unshakable weight of facts. I walked room to room after that, fingers brushing door frames, eyes landing on tiny things I'd stopped seeing. A crack in the trim, the nick on the banister where Thomas had bumped it moving a dresser in 1992. The tin of buttons my mother left me that I kept telling myself I'd sort someday. I wasn't thinking about revenge, not really. I was thinking about how you rebuild a life brick by careful brick when someone tries to move you out of it like you're clutter. Around noon, Daniel checked in one more time. "We'll know more by late afternoon," he said. "For now, rest." I ended the call and sat at the quiet kitchen table with my hands flat on the wood. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel like a lack. It felt like room. I started with the dresser. Lipsticks I'd never wear, a ring dish with a chip, hair ties in a tangle. I set a box on the quilt and moved through the room that had been mine and Thomas's for 4 decades, lifting out what Olivia had scattered like she was laying claim by inches. The throw she'd draped over Thomas's chair went first. I folded it, set it in the box, then reached for the scented candle she'd parked on his nightstand and slipped it on top. By the time the sun had slipped low enough to gloss the floors, 2 boxes were full. I carried them to the porch, one at a time, and stacked them neatly by the railing. I wrote her name on the flaps with a black marker and slid a note between the lids. "Pick up by Friday." The weight in my chest eased a notch with each trip. This was my house. I wasn't trying to erase her. I was just taking back the space Thomas and I had built and tended, the one someone had tried to tell me I didn't own. When I came back in, I stood in the doorway of the living room and looked at it like I was seeing a blueprint. The faded rug could go. The drapes could be lighter. The wall where our wedding photos hung had yellowed around each frame. I'd have those cleaned and reframed, not because I wanted a different life, but because I wanted to honor the one we actually had. I took a piece of paper and started a list. Fix the banister nick from 92. Replace the soft spot under the kitchen sink. Paint the hall a color that makes morning feel kind. It felt a little like inhaling after swimming underwater too long. The phone rang while I was still holding the pen. "Mrs. Bennett? Emily Brooks with Channel 7 News." Her voice was brisk but not unkind. "We're covering financial exploitation of seniors, and your attorney's filings came across our desk. I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm also sorry you've had to deal with this on top of it. Would you consider speaking on camera?" I looked at the list on the counter, then at the boxes on the porch through the screen. "I'm not sure I'm ready to be a face on television," I said, "but I am ready for people to know this happens. We can blur what you want and we can focus on the pattern, not the specifics," she offered. "There's power in hearing it from someone it happened to." "I'll think about it," I said. "Right now, I need to lay down some boundaries in my own life." "That itself is a powerful sentence," Emily said softly. "I'll send you my email. If you decide to talk, you won't be alone in it." After we hung up, I finished my list and taped it to the fridge. Then I made tea and sat at the table where we'd paid bills and argued about the right way to load the dishwasher and written birthday cards to our granddaughter. The house had that late evening hush that presses in on you, the kind Thomas used to break with a joke, a song half sung, the click of a pen as he reviewed something he'd printed. I missed him so acutely I had to put my head down for a minute and breathe through it. Among the documents Daniel had given me was a small drive, the kind you can hang on a key ring, labeled in his assistant's handwriting. "From Thomas," Daniel had said as he tucked it into the envelope. He recorded something for you and for Olivia when he updated the documents. I hadn't pressed play yet. Some doors you only open once. I set the drive beside the sugar bowl and told myself tomorrow would be soon enough. It was. Before the sun had fully cleared the rooftops, the doorbell rang. I knew the cadence of that press. Olivia always held it down a fraction too long. I opened the door to find her on the porch, hair pulled into a tight knot, eyes rimmed with the kind of red you get when you've had a bad night in a place that smells like disinfectant. She glanced at the boxes with her name scrawled on them and winced. "Mom," she said, voice already watery. I'm here to fix this. I don't want to fight. I've been thinking, and I know we got off on the wrong foot. I was only trying to make things easier. You took my mail, I said. You told people I was traveling. You moved me into a motel and left me with $200. She flinched. That was temporary. You were spiraling. Jason said... She cut herself off, like Jason's name was a door she wasn't supposed to open. Look, I said things in anger too. I'm sorry, I am. I've never seen you handle big accounts. I panicked. I thought you needed help. Help is not pushing someone out of her house, I said, keeping my voice even. Help is not signing her name. Mom, please. She looked beyond me into the hallway like she could step through if she just said the right combination of words. We can make an arrangement. We can keep this out of the papers. We can tell everyone it was a mix-up and move on as a family. I'll call Daniel and... Daniel knows, I said. So does Detective Morales. Her gaze went flat for a second, then frantic. I can fix it, she whispered. I'll pay you back for the hotel. She swallowed. I'll apologize publicly. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't make this a criminal thing. I thought of the phone buzzing with her texts. You're confused. This won't work out well for you. Think of the kids. I thought of her standing in my kitchen telling me she'd been letting me stay. Pity isn't love. Ownership isn't care. Come inside, I said and stepped back. Her shoulders dropped like a door had opened that she wasn't expecting would open. In the kitchen, I gestured to the table and walked to the counter. I picked up the small drive and my laptop, plugged it in, and waited while the screen woke up. What's that? She asked, suspicious and hopeful at once. Something your father recorded, I said. For you. She froze, then sat a little straighter. Dad? The word came out small. I clicked play. Thomas filled the screen, sitting in Daniel's office with the skyline behind him and a mug balanced on a coaster. He looked tired around the eyes in a way I hadn't wanted to admit when he was still alive. But his voice was exactly as it had always been when he wanted me to really hear him. Gentle with a thread of steel woven through. Olivia, he began, if you're watching this, it means I didn't get to say this face to face. I love you. I have always loved you, and I'm proud of many things about you. Your mind, your drive, your ability to see angles. But I'm also worried those strengths have calcified into something that hurts the people around you. Your mother, most of all. Olivia's breath hitched. She blinked fast and swiped at her face with the side of her hand. You've pushed your mother for years to think bigger, when what you meant was, give me more, Thomas continued. You called it efficiency when it was cruelty. You called it protecting her when it was controlling her. I bear responsibility for that. I spoiled you in ways I shouldn't have. So I'm putting guardrails in place that I should have put in place long ago. He tapped the edge of the desk, a habit he had when he was choosing words carefully. The house is hers. The majority of the estate is hers. The trust for you comes with a condition any decent person should meet without thinking about it. Treat your mother with respect. If you can't do that, you don't get the money. Not because I want to punish you, but because I won't fund the part of you that forgets she's a human being and not a resource to be managed. He smiled at the camera then, the smile he saved for rare moments when he'd made peace with a hard call. You can be better, I believe that. But if you choose not to be, your mother has every right to live in peace without you at the wheel. I hope you hear this with the love intended. The video ended with the quiet click of the laptop's fan. For a long moment, the kitchen held only our breathing and the hum of the refrigerator. Olivia stared at the dark screen like she could will it to rewind and say something else. She put both hands flat on the table. He let you talk him into this, she said finally, the edge back in her voice. Daniel did. Or you did. Dad would never... He did, I said softly. He saw things I didn't want to see. He tried to give you a chance to choose differently. Tears spilled over. She let them, then dashed them away with the indignation of someone who didn't like to be seen crying. I was grieving, she said. I made mistakes. You're really going to put your own daughter in handcuffs over a misunderstanding? I didn't put anyone in handcuffs, I said. Your choices did, and this won't be decided in my kitchen. Her mouth pressed into a hard line. You would let strangers pick apart our family, she said, voice shaking. I would let the law do its job, I answered, because for once I'm not going to be talked out of what's true. She stood abruptly, chair legs scraping the floor. For a second, I thought she might throw the chair or say something that would scorch the air between us beyond repair. Instead, she stared at me with a look I recognized from when she was 5 and didn't get the candy she wanted. Then she glanced at the boxes on the porch through the screen and gave a tiny, disbelieving laugh. "Pick up by Friday," she read. "You really think this is over?" "I think this is beginning," I said. She walked out, shoulders tight, heels clicking down the steps like punctuation. I followed to the doorway and watched her cross the yard, head high as if dignity could be worn like a coat, no matter what the weather underneath felt like. When I closed the door, the house was quiet again. I set the laptop aside and ran my hand along the edge of the table. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like someone who had walked through a storm and was finally inside, dripping, exhausted, and alive. I glanced at the list taped to the fridge and reached for my phone. On the to-call list, I added a painter, a carpenter, and, after a pause, Emily Brooks from Channel 7 News. If telling the truth could keep another woman from standing in a motel with 2 crisp hundreds and nowhere to go, maybe that was a kind of repair, too. By late afternoon, the list on my fridge had grown 2 columns long, and I was halfway through stripping the bed when a dark sedan slid to the curb out front. The engine cut, the driver stayed put, and a woman climbed out with the kind of posture you get from years of expecting rooms to yield. I knew her before she lifted her sunglasses. "Mrs. Bennett?" she said from the porch, voice velveted over steel. "Patricia Hayes, Jason's mother." I stepped onto the threshold but didn't move aside. Patricia. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't look at the boxes with Olivia written across the flaps. She looked at me the way a jeweler looks at a stone under a light. "I won't take much of your time," she said. "We're both women who've seen a thing or two. Let's talk like adults." I let the screen door rest against my hip and waited. "My son and your daughter have been through enough this week," she said. "So have you. None of us benefits from dragging this out. Here's what I propose." She reached into her bag and withdrew a slim envelope, not the fat kind that holds documents, the kind that holds numbers. $2 million. We wire it today. In exchange, you withdraw the complaint, you stop whatever circus Daniel is spinning up, and you sign a statement clarifying that you authorized Olivia to assist you. I thought of the Sunset Inn's rattling window unit and the 2 crisp hundreds Olivia pressed into my hand like charity. I thought of Thomas's video and his voice when he said guardrails. "No," I said, polite and firm, the way you say no to a telemarketer who won't stop calling. Patricia's mouth moved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I admire the performance," she said softly, as if we were sharing a private joke. "But you're being emotional. $2 million is real relief. It keeps your name out of papers. It lets Olivia return to her children. This is how families solve things." "I'm solving it by telling the truth," I said. "I won't sell that." She slid the envelope back into her bag, then set both palms on the frame of the screen door like she was measuring my threshold. "You think this is about money," she said. "It isn't. It's about what comes next if you insist on a spectacle." Her eyes flicked past me down the hall, as if she could see the outline of Thomas's chair. People have long memories in this town, but they also have a taste for stories. Does Channel 7 need a different angle? Because there's one available. I didn't flinch. "Don't. Thomas's consulting wasn't as tidy as you imagine," she went on, voice sanded smooth. "Old files have a way of opening when reporters knock, and competitors love to whisper. Maybe you know that. Maybe you don't. Either way, it would be a shame if your husband's legacy got dragged through mud he can't wipe off." I felt the instinct to shield Thomas even now, as if I could hold my hands over his name and protect it from weather. "My husband is dead," I said. "You won't threaten him to get me to bend." "This isn't a threat," she said, feigning surprise. "It's a reality check. Everyone has skeletons. Do you really want to invite strangers to rattle your closets? Or would you like to be left in peace to enjoy your home on Oakwood and your... What is it Daniel told you? 23 million? She said the number lightly, as if it were a garnish. You don't get to say his name to me, I said, meaning Thomas, meaning Daniel, meaning anyone she thought she could use like a lever. And you don't get to talk about my piece while you try to buy it. Patricia tilted her head, studying me with a curiosity that didn't bother to be kind. You're not the naive woman you present, she said. Good. That means you'll understand there is a narrow window before public opinion hardens, before prosecutors grow stubborn, before my contacts decide you've chosen humiliation over harmony. She lifted a hand, 2 fingers raised like she was ordering a drink. 5, I can do 5. 5 million to resolve this cleanly. The number hung between us like something shiny and heavy. I let it settle. I pictured the charity fund Thomas and I had talked about starting and never did. I pictured a new roof. I pictured nothing at all except the motel's thin towels and the way my own daughter had called me just the wife. No, I said again. Not for 2, not for 5, not for any number you think you can conjure. Olivia and Jason made choices. There are consequences. Patricia drew her hand back slowly, as if she'd reached for a door she expected to open and found it bolted. You're making a mistake, she said. A public one. You'll be painted as vindictive. They'll call you confused. They'll pick at your marriage. I prefer not to see that happen, but if you insist on pride over prudence, I can't stop the weather. You can stop talking to me like you're the weather, I said, letting my voice carry the edge I'd been holding back since she stepped onto my porch. You're a mother, like me. If your son had done this to you, would you take the money and pretend it never happened? She blinked just once. My son would never, she said. The certainty in her tone was practiced, lacquered, uncracked by evidence or time. I used to say that about my daughter, I answered. Here we are. For the first time, a hairline fissure appeared in her pose. It was tiny, but I saw it. The part of her that knew the difference between the story you tell about your children and the people they really are. She snapped the bag shut. This door is closing, she said. It won't open again. I'm the one closing it, I said. Good day, Patricia. She looked past me one last time into the home she seemed to think of as a chessboard, and then gave the kind of nod that says, very well, you chose this. On the steps, she nearly brushed against the box of Olivia's things. Her gaze flicked to my note. Pick up by Friday, and a small, disdainful smile touched the corner of her mouth, like the handwriting offended her. I watched her cross the yard and slip back into the sedan. The driver pulled away, smooth as water. When the street was quiet again, I finally let myself exhale. My hands were steady on the screen door. My legs weren't. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote down everything she'd said while it was still warm in my mind. 2 million, then 5. Withdraw the complaint, sign a statement. Mention of Channel 7. The hint about Thomas's consulting. I wrote the time, the make of the car, the way she never once asked how I was. I slid the page into an envelope with the other records and labeled it in block letters. Patricia Hayes' visit. Then I called Daniel. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted a record. He picked up on the second ring. She came, I said. Jason's mother. She offered money. She threatened to stir up stories about Thomas. Thank you for calling, he said, voice going quiet the way experienced people go quiet when they're measuring a problem. Don't engage further. If she reaches out again, route it through me. I'll note this and loop Detective Morales. I set the phone down and sat still long enough to hear the house itself, the click of the fridge, the distant tick of a settling vent, the memory of Thomas's laugh caught in the walls like a scent. I thought about love that insists on the truth even when it costs, and love that mistakes control for care. Olivia had learned a kind of math from someone, maybe from both of us in different ways, maybe from a world that rewards the loudest person in the room. I stood and walked to the window. The afternoon had gone bright and brittle, the way days sometimes do after a storm passes without actually changing the humidity. On my list, I added one more line, replace front lock. Not because I was afraid exactly, but because boundaries are easier to keep when the hardware matches the decision. When the doorbell finally rang again, the sun had shifted across the floorboards. It was a delivery, No sender listed, just a heavy bouquet of lilies that made the kitchen smell like a funeral home. There was a small card tucked between the stems. Let's be reasonable. No signature. I set the flowers on the porch beside Olivia's boxes and closed the door behind me with the deliberate, satisfying click of a lock doing what it's designed to do. The lilies were still on the porch in the morning, heavy and sweet like a memory I hadn't asked for. I left them where they were and called Daniel. I didn't want comfort. I wanted traction. "We bring in a private investigator," he said. "Someone who knows what to look for in financial records. I'll make the introduction." By early afternoon, a woman in her 30s with a neat bob and running shoes was sitting at my kitchen table, a laptop open, a scanner humming softly like a pet. "Lena Chen," she said, offering a hand and a card in the same motion. "Daniel said you keep good files. That'll make this faster." "I keep everything," I said, and it struck me that keeping everything had always been my job. Photos, receipts, birthdays, the shape of our days. We started with the home office. Lena had me pull every box labeled tax, consulting, and house. Then the binders Thomas kept with tabs in colors only he understood. She took careful photos, marked envelopes with blue stickers, and slid thumb drives into tamper-evident bags like a nurse drawing vials. "Chain of custody," she explained when I raised an eyebrow. "It matters if anyone ever asks where a document came from." She didn't talk much while she worked. She'd glance at a page and jot a note in tight handwriting. Shell? Same reg agent, layered transfers, retainer. No deliverables. Every so often she'd angle her screen and show me a pattern. "See these invoices? Same amount, different descriptions, regular cadence, no attached work product. Normally you'd expect emails, drafts, something. Whoever set this up knew to make paperwork look busy without saying much." "You're saying Thomas was laundering money," I said. The word felt like a rock in my mouth. "I'm saying I see red flags I can't ignore," Lena replied, kind but unflinching. "There are multiple LLCs paying his consulting firm, all registered to mail drops with the same agent. Funds hop from one account to another in a way that obscures the trail, small enough to stay under some bank's automated thresholds, regular enough to add up. And here," she tapped a highlighted line, "these large deposits precede the creation of a separate investment account that later fed the trust set aside for Olivia." I stared at the line item, the way numbers can look like nothing and suddenly mean everything. "The 10 million, likely seeded by money that could attract federal attention," she said. "If an agency links those funds to illegal conduct and thinks Thomas knew or should have known, they can try to seize the assets, sometimes even if the person is gone." My instinct was to defend him. Thomas with his pen lined up on a legal pad, Thomas kissing the top of my head after a long meeting, Thomas teasing me about how I still wrote grocery lists by hand. "He was careful," I said. "He cared about doing things right. Careful people sometimes become useful to careless ones," Lena said gently. "I don't know yet what Thomas knew. I do know you shouldn't move, spend, or commingle anything tied to that trust until we understand more. If there are suspicious activity reports on file with the banks, they'll surface. And if they do, the government can freeze accounts first and ask questions later." I thought of Patricia on my porch, her velveted voice and the way she'd said legacy, like a thing you could bruise. I thought of Olivia telling me to let her handle it and Jason's quiet eyes skimming the floor while my life went into 2 suitcases. My hands went cold around the mug I hadn't realized I was holding. "What about the house?" I asked. "Is that in danger?" "Title says it's yours," Lena said. "But if someone asserts that Thomas bought or maintained it with tainted funds, they can try to argue for a slice. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm saying people try things when there's money on the table." She looked at me for a long beat. "This next part might be hard to hear. It's better you hear it from me." "Say it," I said. "If the trust money is dirty and was earmarked for Olivia, she may already be talking to someone about an arrangement. People who feel cornered make deals. They offer up bigger fish or cleaner narratives to keep what they can." The sentence moved through me like a chill. Olivia, offering up bigger fish. Jason, calm at his desk while someone clicked a pen, setting a time. I set the mug down before my hands betrayed me. Lena finished the first pass through the files and stacked the binders the way she'd found them. "I'm going to keep digging," she said. "I'll extract the metadata from the drives, mirror your documents, and run corporate filings on the LLCs. Daniel will coordinate with Detective Morales. In the meantime, if anyone asks you to sign something, don't. Route it to Daniel." When she left, the house felt both lighter and as if someone had lifted a rug and shown me what had collected under it. I walked to the porch and moved the lilies to the edge of the step. The pollen dusted my fingers. I wiped it off with a paper towel and went inside to wash my hands. At dusk, my phone rang. Olivia. "I need you to listen," she said, skipping hello. The tone was the one she used when she'd already decided the conversation's shape. "You're in trouble, and I can help you out of it." "I'm not in trouble," I said. "I'm telling the truth." "The truth is, the federal government can come for funds tied to Dad's consulting, and they will," she said. Her words were precise, like she'd practiced them. "Mom, I've been talking to people. This is bigger than you. You won't even see it coming. You'll just wake up with everything frozen and a notice on your door. Who are you talking to? Lawyers who understand forfeiture, people Jason knows, an agent who wants this wrapped without a mess." She took a breath. "Here's how we fix it. We cooperate. Jason provides documentation. He's got access that will be useful. In return, the Bureau lets this stay targeted. They carve out the house, clean. They carve out $5 million for you, clean. The rest goes back or gets handled. We sign agreements, we get guarantees, and this stops before it gets ugly." She said $5 million like she was offering me a blanket on a cold night. I pictured Patricia holding up 2 fingers, then 5. I pictured Lena's notes. Shell? Layered transfers? "Why would I agree to that?" I asked. "Because if you don't, you lose everything," she snapped, then softened it fast. "I'm trying to protect you, Mom. You're not built for depositions and subpoenas. You don't even like crowds. Let me keep this quiet. Let me do what I'm good at." "What you're good at is taking," I said, more tired than angry. "Your father left guardrails for a reason." "Guardrails?" She let out a small laugh that didn't sound like humor. "He wasn't who you thought, Mom. His guardrails were part of the same game. Do you really think a man that careful didn't know where the money came from? Don't be naive. He set a trust with my name on it using money he had to put somewhere. Now it's a problem, and you're sitting on it. I'm trying to keep you from being the face of it." My breath snagged. For a second I could see Thomas in Daniel's office, eyes tired, mug on a coaster, talking about boundaries. The image swung like a door on a hinge and showed me a darker hallway I didn't want to consider. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" I said. "Join a call tomorrow morning at 9, she said. "It's already set. You, me, Jason, and counsel. The agent will be on. We go in together. We present a unified front. We show good faith. We accept the carve-outs, house and $5 million, and agree to certain conditions. In exchange, they forgo charges, we avoid headlines, and you get to live out your life in peace. And if I don't, then I can't help you," she said. "They'll do what they have to. They won't be gentle about it. And Mom," her voice dipped, "if you insist on painting me as a villain, I will protect myself. I will say what I have to say. Are you sure you want to invite that? For the grandkids to read someday?" "You're giving me a deadline," I said. "You're threatening me, and you're calling it protection." "I'm giving you an off-ramp," she said. "I'm giving you a way to keep what matters. I'm giving you until 9 a.m. Don't blow this." "Text me the dial-in," I said, because I wanted the receipt. The line went quiet for a breath, then a ping lit my screen with a calendar invite that had a conference number and a generic subject line: discussion. After she hung up, the kitchen seemed to hum louder. I forwarded the invite to Daniel and typed, "She says there's an agent on this call." He replied in under a minute, "Do not join. If there's an agent, we'll contact the field office ourselves and confirm. We won't let them define the terms. I'll loop Detective Morales." My phone buzzed again. "Lena." "Quick heads up," she said. "I'm seeing names on Thomas's client lists that match prior enforcement actions. Nothing you did, but it increases the odds that someone, somewhere, has already filed internal reports. If Olivia's talking about an agent, it might not be a bluff. It also might not be an agent you want to meet through her. What do I do? I asked. You take control, she said. If there's going to be a conversation with the Bureau, you set it up with counsel. You walk in through the front door with your head up, not through a call Jason arranged. And until then, you say nothing to anyone who isn't your lawyer or the detective. After we hung up, I washed the same mug I'd been carrying around all day and set it in the rack. I walked to the hall and ran my fingers along the banister. Nick from 92, the one on my list to fix. I thought about the stories we tell to make ourselves feel safe. My husband is careful. My daughter wouldn't hurt me. Money in accounts is just numbers on a page and not a hook someone can use. I didn't sleep much. A storm moved through after midnight, rain drumming steady, and I lay there counting the seconds between lightning and thunder, the way Thomas used to when we wanted to know how far away it was. The house felt old and solid around me. I thought about the Sunset Inn and the window unit that rattled like it was giving up. I thought about the guardrails Thomas had set and the way Olivia had tried to turn them into handles she could use. At 6:12, when the light was the color of dishwater and the street was empty, I called Daniel. I don't want their call, I said. I want the real one. Good, he said. I've already left a message with the field office asking for a meeting today. We'll go in person. If there's truly an investigation, we'll cooperate directly. No intermediaries. I'll ask for an agent from financial crimes. You won't go alone. I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed, hands in my lap, breathing steady and slow. The deadline Olivia had set was a clock she didn't get to own. At 9, she could sit on a call and talk about carve-outs and conditions. I had other plans. I would walk into whatever office Daniel told me to walk into and tell the people there exactly what I knew. How I'd been moved like furniture, how papers had been signed with my name, how the money had been arranged, and how, if Thomas had been part of something I didn't understand, I wanted to help make it right. When the hour came and went, my phone lit with a new message from Olivia. You missed it. You made a mistake. You'll regret this. I set the phone face down on the table and picked up my purse. The lilies on the porch had opened wider overnight, their scent thick and unyielding. I closed the door behind me and headed toward a day that wasn't shaped by her timetable. Daniel met me on the sidewalk outside the Federal Building. The morning was sharp and gray, the kind of air that makes you straighten your back. Inside, security wanded my purse and handed me a sticker with the date. We rode an elevator that smelled faintly of coffee and floor cleaner to a hallway where the carpet didn't have to hide stains. A woman in a navy suit greeted us with a grip that said she knew how to hold things steady. Nora Collins, she said. Financial crimes. I'm very sorry for your loss. Thank you, I said. We sat in a small conference room with a glass wall and a view of a parking lot full of unremarkable cars. Detective Morales joined by phone, his voice low and familiar through the speaker. Daniel summarized what had happened. The forged authorizations, the motel, the trust clause, the private investigator's red flags. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were Lena's notes, the calendar Olivia had taped to my door, the list I'd made after Patricia's visit, and the invite Olivia had sent for the 9 a.m. call I hadn't joined. Agent Collins read fast and clean, pen moving in tidy ticks. She asked for dates, names, amounts. When she reached the part about the carved-out house plus $5 million proposal, she set the pen down. That's not how we do business, she said. If someone invokes an agent to pressure you into a deal on an unrecorded call, that someone isn't working with us. I thought so, I said. I wanted to hear it from you. We appreciate you coming in the front door, she said. Given what you've described, 2 tracks make sense. 1, protect you immediately from further interference. 2, document any ongoing attempt to coerce you into obstructing or surrendering assets. She tapped the folder lightly. If your daughter and son-in-law try to negotiate in your living room for a carve-out while invoking us, that's useful evidence. Would you be willing to let us monitor a meeting at your home if they request one? I looked at Daniel. He looked at me. My hands were steady on the table. Yes, I said. If it stops them from doing this to me or anyone again. Agent Collins nodded like the answer mattered. We'll keep you safe. If you agree, we'll place a simple recording device on you and stage a controlled environment. You won't be alone. The room will be technically covered, and a team will be nearby. You won't provoke anything. You'll let them say what they came to say. If they make a demand, if they threaten, if they try to trade money for silence or lie about law enforcement, that's the point. What do I do if I panic? I asked. We'll give you a phrase, she said. You say it, we come in. Or if at any point it crosses a line we've discussed, we don't wait. You don't have to be brave. You just have to be honest. I thought of Thomas's voice on the recording, gentle with steel braided through. I can do honest, I said. They briefed me like they had briefed 100 people before. Device placement, what to avoid, no whispering with your hand over your mouth, no touching the mic. What to expect, they may be charming before they push. They showed me the recorder, small enough to hide in a cardigan seam. They asked me to repeat the phrase. I think I need a glass of water, I said, and even rehearsed it made something flutter in my chest. We didn't have to wait long. At 1:18 p.m., Olivia texted, "We're coming by at 2. This needs to end." She didn't ask, she informed. Jason followed with an address request he already had and a line that read, "Let's all act like adults." By 1:40, an unmarked van I wouldn't have looked at twice was parked halfway down the block. 2 agents in work shirts knocked on my door with a coil of cable and a smile and asked if they could check the lines. Agent Collins came in last, hair pulled back, jacket off, sleeves rolled. She adjusted the tiny device at my collar with the same care I'd used to pin corsages years ago. "You're not bait," she said quietly. "You're the one drawing the line, remember that." At exactly 2, Olivia and Jason walked up the path. Olivia had a folder under her arm and sunglasses pushed on top of her head like a crown. Jason carried a sleek briefcase that looked heavier than it should. I opened the door and let them into my living room, where every surface held some piece of my life they had tried to rearrange. The agents were out of sight. The house hummed like a house does when people who know each other too well are pretending to be polite. Jason set the briefcase on the coffee table and clicked it open. Inside were document sleeves and a legal pad with bullet points written in Jason's precise hand. Olivia spoke first. "We're here to resolve this," she said. "No lawyers, no cops, just family." "I already have both," I said. "They're not going anywhere." She smiled a fraction too wide. "Or we can let this escalate and ruin everyone's life. That seems counterproductive." Jason slid a sheet toward me. "This is a proposed statement," he said. "It affirms you authorized Olivia to help with your affairs during a period of grief. You rescind any suggestion of exploitation. You acknowledge an agent has advised us that the fastest way to dispose of the tainted assets is a voluntary surrender of the bulk funds, except for carve-outs. The carve-outs are the house and $5 million for you. You'll sign. We'll notarize. Everyone moves on." My heart thumped once. A dull drum I could feel in my throat. "There is no agent advising you to carve out $5 million, I said. "And you don't get to define what I keep as if it was yours to give." Olivia leaned forward, elbows on her knees, fingers knit like she was praying for patience. "Mom, you're not hearing me. This protects you. If you force this into court, the Bureau will take everything tied to Dad's clients. They'll drag his name through the mud. They'll drag you through it too. Children will read about their grandmother being confused. Is that what you want? You used to call me strong," I said. "Now you call me confused because it's convenient." Jason tapped the legal pad. His voice was soft, reasonable, the kind of tone people use to steer a meeting. "We have relationships," he said. "We can make this clean. There are timelines you don't understand. There are people you don't want to cross. Be smart." "People like who?" I asked. He didn't answer that. He pushed a pen toward me instead. "Sign the statement. We'll handle the rest." The room felt tight around the edges. The device at my collar hummed like a second heartbeat. I thought of the Sunset Inn, the window unit rattling in and out of breath. I thought of Patricia holding up 2 fingers, then 5. I thought of Thomas saying guardrails, and of Agent Collins telling me I didn't have to be brave, just honest. "I think I need a glass of water," I said. The words barely left my mouth before the room changed shape. The front door opened and Agent Collins stepped in with 2 agents behind her, badges up, voices calm and clear. "Olivia Hayes, Jason Hayes, federal agents, we have a warrant." Jason's hand hovered over the briefcase like he could make it disappear just by wanting it to. Olivia's face went white, then red. "This is illegal," she snapped, standing fast. "You can't just barge in." "We can with consent from the homeowner," Agent Collins said, eyes steady on Olivia. "Which we have. Please sit." The next minutes unfolded like a drill they'd done 100 times. One agent collected the documents from the briefcase and photographed each page. Another read a list of charges I couldn't repeat now but understood in plain language. Fraud, exploitation of a vulnerable adult, attempted obstruction. Olivia kept talking over them. First sweet, then sharp, then pleading. Jason tried to stay smooth and failed. "You don't understand," he said over and over, as if understanding would change facts. When they asked Jason to stand and turn around, he stared at me instead of at the agent. "You're making enemies you can't see," he said, quiet and flat in a way that made the hair on my arms lift. "You have no idea what Thomas was into. You think you're safe because you have paper. Paper doesn't stop everything." "Jason," Agent Collins said, "that sounds like a threat. You don't want to add to your problems." "It's a warning," he said, "for her." They led him toward the door. Olivia jerked away when an agent reached for her hands, then went limp like a child who refuses to walk. "Mom," she said, eyes wild, "stop this. Tell them we were just trying to help. Tell them I'm your daughter." "I told the truth," I said, and my voice didn't break. They took them both, the front door opening and closing with the polite finality of a book shutting. The house went so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I stood where I was and held onto the back of a chair. Agent Collins stayed. She didn't talk right away. She looked around the room the way someone looks at a place where something important has just happened and lets the air settle. Then she set a small file on the table and sat. "You need to hear something," she said. "I debated whether to say this today. I decided it's kinder to say it now than to let you carry questions that will eat you up." I sat too, hands folded so I wouldn't pick at the seam of my sleeve. "All right? We've known Thomas Bennett's name for a long time," she said. "Not because he was our target, because he was our source." I blinked. The word didn't land at first. "Source?" "Cooperating source," she said. 12 years. She spoke it plainly, no drama, just a fact placed on the table. He wasn't the operator some people thought he was. He played along to get inside. He brought us things we couldn't have gotten otherwise. Transaction maps, shell charts, names. He helped us put people away. I held very still. A picture fell into place that I didn't know I'd been missing. Thomas in his office with a mug on a coaster looking tired around the eyes. Thomas saying we should do the right thing even if it was complicated. Thomas insisting on meeting in person with Daniel for certain changes. "He didn't tell me," I said. Not as a complaint, just as a fact. "He couldn't," she said. "Not and keep you safe. He set up guardrails for you for the same reason he came to us, to protect you from people who see a woman like you as an obstacle or an asset. We have sealed filings to that effect. We also have records that show any personal proceeds he retained were clean. Consulting fees we cleared, carve-outs for cooperation, salary from a legitimate arm of his work. The trust under your control that's caused you so much fear, not tainted. The estate? Not subject to the forfeiture Olivia waved around like a sword. The breath I'd been holding left me in a sound that wasn't quite a sob. "You're sure?" "We wouldn't say it if we weren't," she said. "We've been waiting for some overlapping cases to resolve before unsealing certain pieces. Today moved the timeline up." I pressed my palms together and pictured Thomas's hand next to mine, tapping the margin with his pen like punctuation. A laugh wobbled out of me that surprised us both. "He was always one for order," I said. He labeled the extension cords. Agent Collins smiled, the kind of smile people share when they've watched a storm pass in someone's eyes. "He labeled a lot more than that, Mrs. Bennett." She grew serious again. "Jason wasn't wrong about one thing. There are people who won't like how this shook out. We'll add your address to patrol lists. We'll flag your accounts so any attempt to touch them pings us. You won't do this alone. Detective Morales will coordinate on the local side, and if Patricia Hayes or anyone in their orbit approaches you again, you let Daniel handle it or you call us. No private negotiations, no deals." "I'm done with deals," I said. She stood, left the file on the table. "That's for you," she said. "Plain English summaries of what I just told you, contact numbers, victim advocacy resources, if you want them. Today was a lot." She paused at the door. "And for what it's worth, you did exactly what we ask people to do. You told the truth, you didn't let yourself be rushed, and you let us help. That's harder than it sounds." After she left, I walked to the window and watched 2 agents load the briefcase into a car. Across the street, the van door slid shut. The lilies on the porch had started to brown at the edges. I picked them up and carried them to the bin. Inside, the house felt like itself again. I set the file on the table beside the list taped to the fridge and traced the line that said, "Fix the banister, Nick from 92. I touched the nick with my finger and imagined smoothing it out. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about repair. The kind you can see and the kind you can't. The kind that takes patience and the decision to stay put when someone tries to move you like a piece on a board. My phone lit up with a number I didn't know, then went quiet when I didn't pick up. The silence after that wasn't empty. It was a room I could stand in without apologizing to anyone for taking up space. I breathed in and smelled sawdust in my imagination. Paint, coffee. I sat down and read the first page of the file Agent Collins had left until the words on the line, not subject to forfeiture, stopped looking like a miracle and started looking like a fact. 6 months is enough time for a house to remember itself. The banister nick from 92 is gone, sanded smooth and sealed so your palm glides instead of catching. The hall is a soft, forgiving color that makes mornings feel kind, exactly like I wrote on a list one shaky afternoon. The soft spot under the kitchen sink has been replaced, the pipes don't groan, and the drapes in the living room are light enough to move when the window is open. If you stand on the front porch of 847 Oakwood Drive at dusk, the air smells faintly of cut grass and paint, and the porch light doesn't flicker anymore. I keep my lists still, but they aren't triage now, they're plans. Replace the rug, done. Frame the wedding photos, done. Call Daniel about the foundation documents, done with a neat folder labeled the way Thomas would approve. There's a line that says plant herbs with a little check mark beside it. There's another that reads coffee with Lena, because friends can begin in strange places and become something you choose. The legal storm didn't last forever. Olivia and Jason pled, then fought, then pled again. There were hearings I sat through with my hands folded on my lap, the way my mother taught me to sit when I had to endure something. Detective Morales nodded at me once from the aisle like a person who keeps watch without making a show of it. Agent Nora Collins shook my hand outside a courtroom and said only, "Almost there." When the judge pronounced 18 months, my breath left me, not as triumph, but as relief, a clean edge after months of sawing. I didn't speak at sentencing. I wasn't asked to, and if I had been, I'm not sure I would have. The prosecutor read my statement, a careful page about what happened and what it did to me, and that was enough. I didn't look at Olivia as they led her out. I looked at my own hands and reminded myself they'd learned how to steady a life long before anyone tried to pry it out of them. Money, for all its noise, quieted too. Daniel introduced me to a new financial advisor, Dr. Maya Chen, who explained things in plain English and never once treated me like a child. We met at the long table where Thomas used to spread out prospectuses. Dr. Chen drew simple shapes on yellow paper until my shoulders dropped, and the world made sense again. We built guardrails of our own, not because I planned to forget my boundaries once the dust settled, but because infrastructure helps when the heart gets tired. The trust that had felt like a lit fuse turned out to be what Agent Collins promised it was, not subject to forfeiture. I learned new words, basis, laddering, charitable remainder, words that once would have rolled off me like rain on a coat. I say them now without apology. When paperwork arrives, I read it. When I sign, I know why I'm signing. There's satisfaction in that I didn't expect at 67. Channel 7 News aired their piece in late spring. Emily Brooks came by with a small crew, set up soft lights in the living room, and asked questions like a person who understood that truth isn't a spectacle. We talked about patterns, not gossip. We talked about how love gets twisted into permission and how help can become a leash if you aren't careful with the knot. After it ran, my inbox filled with notes from strangers, women and men who'd been pushed, prodded, signed over, or set aside. I answered as many as I could. I printed a few and kept them in a folder labeled "Keep Going." Then the emails got bigger. Netflix called. They wanted to do a documentary series on financial abuse of elders, on the quiet ways families go wrong and what justice can look like when it remembers compassion. My first instinct was to shut the door. My second was to open it a crack and ask for control. I told them I wouldn't reenact anything. I wouldn't read anyone's lines. I would not be filmed crying on command. They agreed to terms I could respect, and for the first time in months, a new kind of work entered the house. Camera cases instead of evidence boxes, call sheets instead of subpoenas. The crew taped foam under the tripod feet so they wouldn't scuff the floor. They moved slowly, asked before touching frames, and left the place tidier than they found it. Thomas would have liked that. The fun Thomas and I daydreamed about for years finally got a name and a bank account. We called it the Bennett Guardrail Fund because the word mattered to us both. Dr. Chen helped file the papers. Daniel reviewed bylaws with the focus he saves for things that outlast the people who sign them. We offer small grants to older adults who need emergency help. A locksmith after a lockout, a motel for someone who's been pushed out by a relative with a hard jaw and a soft explanation. A first hour with a lawyer who will actually listen. We launched a scholarship too, modest at first, for social work students focusing on elder advocacy. The first recipient sent me a handwritten thank you note that smelled like library stacks and new ink. I cried, then laughed at myself for crying, and then cried again for the right reasons. Olivia writes from time to time. The first letter arrived on paper from the detention center. Blue lines neat, loops tight. She apologized, then defended, then apologized again as if shifting angles could make a picture look different without repainting it. Later letters were simpler. She asked about my health. She asked if I'd send photographs of the house. She asked me to remember who we were before we became versions of ourselves we don't recognize. She wrote about her children, their milestones measured against institutional calendars. She asked if they could visit. She asked if I could. I answer some of them. I don't answer others. I draw a line in ink and in action. I won't campaign to keep her away from her kids. That's not my right. But I also won't pretend we haven't broken something that can't be put back exactly as it was. When I see my grandchildren, we talk about school, soccer, books. We make cookies in a kitchen that smells like lemon oil and sugar. And I don't say a word that turns me into a coaxer or a judge. One day, when they're grown enough to ask the unsoftened questions, I'll tell them the truth in the same voice I used when they were small and asked where the moon goes during the day. Until then, I keep the door open to them and the locks changed for everyone else. Patricia hasn't come back. The lilies were the last I saw of her, and even that feels like a scene from a different house. On some mornings, I catch myself imagining what she tells herself about me, about her son, about the shape of responsibility. Then I let the thought go, the way you let go of a sweater that doesn't fit anymore, no matter how much you wish it would. Agent Collins checks in less frequently now. A quick call, a shorter text. Detective Morales sent a final update with the tidy closure only cops and clerks can make. Case numbers, dates, disposals. Lena stopped by last week with strawberries from a farmer's market and a grin I recognized from the first day we met, only softer. We sat on the porch and ate them with our fingers, sweet and messy, and didn't talk about chain of custody at all. At night, the house is quiet in a way that doesn't feel like loss. I've started leaving a book on Thomas's chair, the way he used to leave one on mine. Sometimes I talk to him out loud, which I used to think was a sign of not letting go. Now I think it's just what people do when they live with memory and gratitude at the same address. I tell him about the banister, about the kid who won the scholarship, about how the tomatoes finally took in the spot that gets morning light. I tell him I'm all right. It's mostly true. If I'm honest, there are moments, a certain song on the radio, a pair of shoes by the door, an envelope with a government seal, when my body remembers the motel and how the walls smelled like bleach. Then I look around at the light streaming across our floor, at the list on the fridge that says things like, "Call the painter back about a small drip," and I'm reminded that damage isn't the opposite of strength. Sometimes it's the reason you learn to be strong in the first place. People ask me quietly, like they're asking for the recipe to something they can't name, whether revenge felt good. I tell them the truth. I didn't get revenge, not the kind people imagine. I didn't slam a door and strut. I didn't make anyone bleed. I told the truth with my back straight. I kept what was mine. I helped make it harder for the next person to be pushed out of her own life. I fixed a nick in a banister and started a fund with a name that makes me feel like Thomas is still tapping the margin with his pen and nodding yes. If there's a word for what happened to me, it's not victory and it's not defeat. It's return to here, to myself, to a version of my life where I don't have to prove I deserve to be in it. The best answer to being underestimated wasn't to lash out. It was to stand up, take a breath, and become the woman they didn't expect me to be.